So welcome everybody, thanks for joining us. We'll have a few more people coming through at the moment. This is our last webinar of the week because it's Good Friday tomorrow, although I am going to be doing an Instagram live at 2 o'clock if you want to ask me any sort of informal personal questions. I'm going to be doing a bit of a recap of the last 3 weeks of what we've been doing and also what Pathway have been doing to be more of an online business. So hopefully you might find that interesting tomorrow if you're bored on Good Friday. But I really wanted to bring you this session because I just really wanted to focus on apprenticeships. Just really focus on it. I get all the information that we can gather. I know I've got people on this webinar who are applying for apprenticeships. Some people are thinking about it. So yeah, it's a really good session for us to get going. The poll that I've launched, I asked you, are you looking forward to the Easter weekend? 78% of you said yes. 22% of you are indifferent. What is your first choice if you had to pick? In fact, I can share these results. So you can probably see them there. Danny, can you see those results there?
Yep.
Yep. There we go. What is your first choice if you had to pick? 44% apprenticeship any level, 28% only degree level apprenticeship. So you have to have a degree at the end of it. That's interesting. 6% university, 6% gap year, and 17% other. It might be quite interesting, guys. If you ticked other, could you put in the chat box what that is? That might be quite interesting. And this is one question that I asked. So which expression do you think gets used more from school leavers? I'm doing Danny, I'm going to ask you this. I'm doing an apprenticeship because I didn't get into university. You can't see the full question there. Or I'm going to university because I didn't get an apprenticeship. 67% say I'm going to do an apprenticeship because I didn't get into uni. Danny, what would you say? What would you say to that? Do you have any comments on that? Without getting too detailed.
I'm not surprised, to be perfectly honest, because university still is deemed as the more popular route. But interesting to see that it's almost a kind of a poor relation, a second cousin, such to university rather than an alternative.
It's really interesting. The reason I sort of set that off to start with is that somebody I was speaking to the other day who's been had a lot of experience in graduate roles and apprenticeship roles. They were saying how it's starting to change now, and some young people are starting to say, oh, I'm going to uni because I didn't get that apprenticeship. Maybe that's because apprenticeships are getting more competitive. Maybe it's because young people are starting to realise that. But it's interesting to see that it was flipped in terms of what you guys were thinking. So good to start us off with a bit of a poll. We've got one later. Let me crack on. So in terms of communication, I'll talk you through how you can communicate on this webinar in a second. We'll go through introductions and ask Danny some top line details. And then we'll go into the main content, which is about apprenticeships, digging into the detail. And hopefully I'll have some good questions from you guys. Any question you want to ask, this is how you do it. The chat box. So if you're on your PC, you'll have a chat box, you'll have a Q&A box. You can also raise your hand. Basically, if you raise your hand, I can let you speak and I'll unmute you and you can actually have a conversation with us. That's what I prefer. That's really nice to engage with you in that way. The Q&A box, that's where you should ask your questions. If you don't want to raise your hand and speak, put them in the Q&A box and we'll get to them. And the chat box is where you can just write ad hoc requests or anything like that we might come up to. Maybe at the end, we might ask you what you learned from the session. Stick it in the chat box. So you know who I am. I'm obviously Chris, who set up Pathway, and I've been doing lots and lots of webinars recently. But it's about Danny today and the co-op. And it's great that the co-op are supporting Pathway and supporting basically young people. And the fact that you guys, look, we've got 39 people on this webinar over Easter. So it's just phenomenal. But Danny, could you please give us a bit of an introduction about what that role is that you've got there at the co-op and what you do?
Apart from being the longest job title ever, so my role here at Co-op is effectively to lead on all things early careers, and what that means is kind of starting your career. So anyone from university through to school, through to people who've been unemployed for a long period of time and looking to get back into their career. My role at the Co-op is to effectively plan and deliver all recruitment and all initiatives which sit around that kind of piece of work. And clearly in the title there is apprentice. So my background is in student and apprentice recruitment, and the community piece is absolutely what I've mentioned just then. So I do a lot of work with individuals who are who are quite far away from the job market. So maybe have been unemployed for a long time. Young people as well who maybe have kind of lost their way after school, and people who have been made redundant as well, and helping them get back into into a rhythm and routine of a career, and hopefully with us here at the Co-op.
And Danny, you said it's been quite manic times at the moment in terms of getting more people in frontline and helping support your stores. What's it been like over COVID-19 at the Co-op?
I think there's only one word for that: absolutely crazy. Yeah, it's been a really, really busy experience, busy time for everybody. So our food stores are, as you would probably guess, performing really well from a commercial perspective, but under massive pressure from a kind of a supporting our communities and from a colleague point of view. Colleagues in retail aren't unaffected by COVID-19, so we do have a lot of people who are self-isolating as such, and over the past 2 weeks we've managed to recruit just over 5,000 new colleagues into our business, which is, to put that into perspective, that's half the number of colleagues we would recruit in a year in 2 weeks. So yeah, I've aged about 10 years in the past 2 weeks. I've slept.
You must have been looking young before then, Danny.
Thanks, Chris. But yeah, but very, very busy. But a really exciting time, I think, to be in retail, because whilst there's a lot of pressure, it brings new ways of working. It brings different pieces of thinking. It challenges the status quo, and I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens in our sector, in other sectors as well, off the back of this crisis as such.
Yeah, and Danny, we'll get to understand the different types of apprenticeships that the Co-op do, for example, but it's not just about the Co-op today, but we will look into that. What about the different types of businesses at the Co-op? Because it's not just food and stores that you guys do, is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, so a lot of people will know the Co-op as a corner shop, effectively, a food retailer, convenience store. But we've also got a funeral care business, so we are the market-leading funeral care business. And that's a really interesting part of our business to work within and be involved in. We also have our insurance business as well. We have lots of kind of other industries as such that sit behind all of those. So can I just interrupt? Can I just give a massive shout out to Emily Reynolds, who's just said she's a new recruit to the Co-op team? Yes.
Really?
Yeah, well done. Welcome to the team.
That is amazing. Emily Reynolds. Well done. Emily, we'll have to let you speak later on. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, so we've got, so what you traditionally associate with retail is food stores. We've got a funeral care business. We have our insurance business. We also have a huge network of depots and logistics and supply chain. But here in the office, which I've given you a virtual kind of look around as such, there are probably over, I would probably guess, around 50 to 60 different industries sitting within one building, from marketing to finance to IT to recruitment and HR, all the way through to the teams that design new food products for us and buy them as well.
Brilliant. It's great to get that overview. Thanks, Danny. But we want to unpick a little bit more about Danny Matthews. So I went to university. It was a great experience for me. But let's just talk about your experiences and what you've been through. So Bachelor of Arts into HR. So university, just quickly talk us through that, if you could, your journey.
Yeah, I'll go back a little bit before that, to be honest
with
you. So when I was kind of growing up, I always wanted to be a pilot, an airline pilot, and I received a scholarship to an airline school in New Zealand and turned it down. I'm not going to go into the reasons why I turned it down, but I turned it down, and to this day, it's still probably the biggest regret of my life. And to go from a pilot to then wanting to become a teacher, to then deciding I'm actually going to do business at university, was a really kind of change in landscape over the period of kind of between 11 and probably kind of 18, really. But I settled on going to university. Decided to stay local to where I'm from, up in the northeast in Darlington. So I studied at Teesside University and studied business. I'd done business at A level, so naturally there's a progression route there into university. And throughout my business course, really got a flavour for the kind of parts of a corporate environment or an organisation I want to be in. So I kind of tried my hand at cybercrime. Interesting. Definitely stopped me from using some programs on the web on our computers at home, which were, let's say, not legal. So I've stopped I stopped doing that very quickly, but knew that wasn't for me. And then came across HR, and I didn't quite understand. I'd heard a lot of people talking about HR. I had no clue what it meant. To be perfectly honest. Human resources, obviously, is what it stands for. And the more I delved into them, the more I actually realised that desire for me to want to become a teacher was actually rooted in wanting to help people and support people. And in a corporate environment, a lot of that kind of activity sits in or comes from the HR team. And that's where I really started to get involved in HR as such. And I worked through kind of first and second year, still fumbling my way into the university life as such. And then decided in my third year to take on a placement year. So I decided, so I'd worked in retail, part-time jobs, and really enjoyed the buzz of it. So I went to work for Lidl supermarkets in the Northeast on a placement year. The best experience I probably have had in my career so far. It's really fantastic way to gain experience. It'll give you a well-rounded experience of the workplace. But I think the one thing that helped me do more than anything is to add things to the list of career choices that I wanted to take, and definitely cross things off the list that I didn't want to do post university.
Danny, I've just had Manav put his hand up. We don't normally get this that early, but Manav, do you want to ask Danny a question at this stage? I've just let me just unmute you, just make sure that works. Unmute. Does that work, Manav? You've got to be able to, you've got to click unmute, otherwise we'll just keep going. No, not to worry. So you got a first degree, Danny, and you did an industry placement. That's really important to us because some students are thinking apprenticeship university. Just talk me through the value of that, of what you did. First degree, industry placement. Is that really important if you choose to go to uni?
Yeah, I think, you know, that more and more students are obtaining very great grades at university. And that's a fantastic tribute to the quality of education in the country. What I would say is getting a first class degree, yeah, fine, great, it looks great on your CV, but it's not everything. And I'll come on to this how apprenticeships really play into this. But the first degree gives me the knowledge. It gives me an understanding and an underpinning of theoretical learning in a subject, but the placement and part-time work and extracurricular activities that I did at university really helped me gain that experience and develop those skills effectively. I would probably say I wouldn't be in the position I'm in now had I have not done an industrial placement to be able to connect the dots between theory and practical in the workplace. So the value is massive, not just from a professional perspective, which is about that knowledge and skills piece, but on a personal level as well. It helps you grow up. It helps you have an understanding of what you think is full-time isn't full-time when you're working in a retail and you've got to get up at 5 a.m. to go and do a shift in logistics. And that's only a short period of time for you on a placement, but it gives you a real kind of awareness of how people, what careers actually look like, that people do that day in, day out, and they've done that for 30, 40 years. So it's really, really value adding to your personality, to your personal kind of profile, and importantly to your professional life choices after university, or even 10, 15, 20 years down the line.
And Danny, finally, obviously you're a driven person, but and you've done your placement and you've become a department lead. Only a quarter of young people, 16 to 19, do some sort of part-time work. What stuck out on your LinkedIn profile for me was that you do some stuff with the ISC. I think you're is it you're on a board of something else. So you're still also doing extra stuff outside your day job. How do you do that, and how important is it to you as a person?
How do I do it in the sense of there's two parts to that. I think there's how do you access it. I think that's about building your network and building a reputation, and that comes through hard work and commitment. But it also comes in interest. I think any extracurricular activity, really, you have to be interested. You wouldn't go and play football if you didn't like football. I wouldn't be part of the ISC if I wasn't interested in giving opportunities to young people. And I've recently been appointed a non-exec director of a charity in Manchester, an employment charity, helping individuals who are very much in that poverty kind of a demographic into employment, and helping them get into the workplace as such. And that's a very new experience for me. There's a lot of legalities, a lot of formalities, and I'm probably the least formal person, I think, in the office, to be honest. But it's been a real learning curve, but it's been absolutely fantastic to get involved in something different. And it's hard to balance your time. You know, I've got a home life and a work life, and a big football fan myself, so I do follow a football team all over the country. But I also need to find time for developing myself, because actually, through those networks and through being a member of the ISC and linked to my job, but separate from a personal perspective, I've been able to get myself a mentor, which has really helped me develop my career and look at things differently. Helped me to move organisations from where I was in Lidl to Co-op, and almost give me that confidence to take that jump as well. So there's lots of things which can be gained from extracurricular activity, but it just helps you get round that kind of how do I put it? It helps you give yourself a more of a rounded experience to your CV. So you're not just looking at things from a work perspective or a co-op point of view. Actually, you're looking at things outside of that, personally and professionally.
And just quickly, Danny, on that point, before you give us a quick recap of some of the stuff we've been doing already through the webinar series, how important is it to have a mentor? Should everybody have one?
No, not everyone should have a mentor. Not everyone needs a mentor. I think it has to be at the right time for you. I think it's an opportunity to learn from somebody, but you have to be in the right space of mind. You have to be willing to learn, and you can go through stages in your career, can't you? If I'm ready to learn, actually, I need to just settle and let the dust settle a little bit in jobs, tasks, and education. But when you are really looking for guidance, when you feel a little bit lost or you need help making a decision, then a mentor can really, really help that.
Yeah, okay. No, that's good advice. Thanks, Danny. We're just going to move on to, we're going to make Danny work really hard for us today, guys, by the way. So so there's 8 different topics that we've already been through in the last couple of weeks. Just any sort of points on any of those, Danny, that come to mind for you, I wonder?
Yeah, I'll keep it short and sweet. I've got one for every single point there. So
Brilliant. Let's
start with CVs. Keep it relevant. So if you've got lots of experience in lots of different things, if you're applying for a job in retail and you've got experience in retail, then we want to hear about that. If you've got experience working in a woodland trust and it's not relevant to retail, then keep that really simple. Just pull out those transferable skills. So keeping it simple, being really succinct. My advice would be, if you are limited on experience, then things around interest, hobbies, extracurricular activities are great. Do never feel pressured, I know this is definitely more than one point, don't feel pressured to put loads of personal data on there. You don't have to. If an employer wants to find out more, make sure you give them a point of contact, but that's about it. You don't have to put how many kids you've got, what car you drive, what pets you've got. Just keep it really simple.
Brilliant.
Number 2 is work experience. It's an interesting one at this point in time. I think a lot of work experience programs have been kind of turned upside down and back to front with COVID-19. But in a nutshell, I think work experience, people come to the point of it is a physical experience in a workplace for a week. It doesn't have to be. I always talk about work experience, strangely, about experience of the workplace. The difference I make in those 2 phrases are having a phone call conversation with a colleague in a business is as good, or it can be as good as spending a week making a tea in a business, because you're going to get a very different experience. You can ask questions, you can probe, and it's ultimately work experience is about finding out about a workplace, about an industry, about a job. And therefore I would say, look at different ways to get work experience. So that could be contacting people within organizations. It could be applying for formal programs. It could be linking into networks that colleges, universities, and schools already have to try and secure that. Parents are usually the kind of starting point as well. And it comes down to that network piece as well. And whether you have a network or you don't have a network of individuals, work experience is definitely accessible. You've just got to be confident enough to go and ask the question.
Confidence, I like it. Thank you. What about LinkedIn? Top line, Danny.
LinkedIn, don't schmooze, so don't try and be a salesman. LinkedIn is a professional network, so don't try and smooth employers as such. Just keep it to you, be yourself. The one thing I would say is, and it's really helped me, is LinkedIn can also act as your CV, so keep it up to date, because you can then quickly download your CV every time you want to. pull together a new CV for a new application.
Brilliant. That's perfect. That's what we've been saying. So I'm pleased you've said that, Danny. What about networking to get your first job? Did you network, I wonder, Danny? Give us some top tips.
Networking, be yourself, be really open, ask questions, be curious, and capitalize on opportunities. Don't shy away don't shy away from asking questions of people that you never met before. Because us as an employer, me as an adult, I would absolutely be open to people asking questions. You're not going to be met with that same response from everyone, of course, but I would pretty much hope that a lot of adults in this country, in the world, would be quite open to understanding they were once in your shoes and everyone had to start from somewhere. So building that network is about being open, being yourself, and taking opportunities as and when they come.
Brilliant. And we've been through the interview technique using STAR for competency style questions. Is competency something familiar with the co-op in terms of questioning?
Yes, yeah, it is. Yeah. So I think on this point, I think preparing for interviews, don't overwrite. A lot of people, try and do the STAR, which is fantastic, and that's the method we would advocate using as well. But if you want to make notes, don't overwrite. Don't try and answer the question you don't know is coming by paragraphs. So you'll lose the point of preparation. So keep it really simple. And I would say, if you can, make some little notes that you can take into an interview with some really clear bullet points as to what that looks like. And usually it's a trigger. So for me, I always use the situation. If I've got that really clear and really obvious on my notes, then the technique, or the task, the action, and therefore the results will follow, because you should have revised effectively.
And that's with practice, is it, Danny? You've got to practice these things?
100%.
Right.
Yeah, practice with anyone. But just try and make sure that you simulate as much as you can a real interview. So I've found that practicing with my friends is absolutely no good, because they just want to have a laugh with you, right? Which isn't helpful when you're trying to prepare for an interview.
Exactly. And cover letters for a small business like mine, we would use one with a CV. For big businesses, sometimes they put it into the application structure. So what's your view on cover letters?
Yeah, interesting one. Probably less used now more than ever for a lot of organizations. I think small organizations still use it, but one thing I would say is try and avoid creating a list of your CV in paragraph format. Too many times have I read a cover letter which is effectively a repeat of their CV, but in paragraph format. Bring yourself to life. Talk about why you've applied for that position. Bring out your personality, because we can see your work experience on the next page of your CV. What I can't see is why you, and why do you want this opportunity.
Brilliant. Thank you. Strengths, Danny. Have you got anything to say about identifying and speaking about them?
Yeah, so first one around identifying. Chris, I believe you did a Capfinity session.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
So if you can revisit that, use the tools that are available and the advice given by Capfinity. Fantastic company and a really good opportunity to identify those strengths. If you can't, then one thing I would always recommend to get a real good picture of yourself is getting something what we call 360 feedback. So that's asking people who are potentially your managers in part-time work, your teachers, asking your parents, asking your friends, asking your relatives, asking people that you might have worked with but aren't really overly close with, but will have a good view of your strengths. And in terms of talking about them, well, they're your strengths, so be confident in them. If you're not confident that they are your strengths, then I would question they are your strengths, to be honest with you, without being a bit of a tongue twister there. So be really confident that they are yours. They're no one else's. No one else is unlikely someone will have the same strengths as you. So be confident in talking about them. Use STAR techniques to bring them to life. And because ultimately, a strength is about an identifying factor of something that you enjoy. So be passionate about it. Bring it to life. Throw yourself into it and bring that enthusiasm which comes with talking about strengths.
So Danny, again, re-emphasizing that strengths are important. If you didn't do the CAP strengths module with us, we can give you free strength tests through this program. And they're going to do a few more webinars with us over April. So you will know by the end of April what your strengths are. Don't worry. And then finally, Danny, you've done it yourself. I wonder how many years it took you, but how do you progress into management? Like if you're really keen to be a manager so quickly in your career?
Yeah, I think I would really be cautious on the word manager here. So management can be people management, it could be project management, and not everyone, when they hear the word manager, thinks, oh, I want to manage loads of people. I used to manage people and now I don't. I manage an area. So the reality is just being really mindful that being a manager doesn't have to mean that you've got to be a real people person. You can also be very much project led. I think the three things I would say is be curious and ask questions. At any stage of your career, be that first day on the job, be that first job, be that experience, ask questions. There is no such thing as a stupid question. Build your networks, and that comes through time. Corporate, so build your network in an employer, build it with school, build it outside of that, because all of that experience, all of that knowledge, you can then bounce off. You might even find yourself a mentor who can help you make those decisions to move up. And I think that the third piece for me would be just really around challenging when appropriate. So one of the things which I see in some really great managers is really being open to being challenged. So being challenged on their thinking, on their thoughts, on their ideas and decisions, but also have the confidence to challenge in the right way, because that will show a level of leadership as well. And it's that leadership piece which can really separate a manager and a leader. And it's the leader trait that you will see help you progress further than just that junior management.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Danny, for going over some of the content that we've already done at Pathway. And you heard it from Danny himself, ask questions. So guys, hopefully you've learned a bit more about Danny as a person and a professional, and you can ask him different questions throughout this session. Do so, absolutely. It's your opportunity to. So before we go into the different levels of apprenticeships, Danny, just top line, I know there's students on here, the majority are thinking apprenticeships, so they probably know, but what exactly are they? And I suppose, how are perceptions changing, would you say? Because you're well known in the market, you know, you're graduates, apprenticeships. How is the perception changing of apprenticeships?
So first and foremost, apprenticeships have been around for about 300 years in different formats. You'll be pleased to know they're not the same as they were 300 years ago. There have been very different formats of apprenticeships. Originally, I think you had to sign up for a 10-year apprenticeship and live with the employer. Don't worry, no employers will ask you to do that now. But they've massively changed over the past kind of 50 years. And a real turning point in apprenticeships has been the last 5 years. So before I jump into that perception change, a real quick summary of what an apprenticeship is. An apprenticeship is an opportunity, a learning pathway, which effectively marries learning on the job, so vocational learning, with qualifications or structured learning, which is qualified by examination boards and the Department for Education as well. They are not lesser than traditional academic routes. They are a different type of learning. Perceptions on that piece, I think, are there in what I've just said. So a lot of people think if you do an apprenticeship, you're not very clever. That is absolute rubbish. Yeah. Traditionally, they were very much manual, very vocational routes, but why wouldn't they be when it's about learning on the job? But they've really changed in the last three to 4 years, and the levy coming in 2017 has really brought a different perspective on apprenticeships from both employers, from schools and colleges, and even universities, and most certainly yourselves as students as well. And it's really good to see, because actually, do you need to go to university to be a lawyer? Traditionally, you had to. You don't anymore. So actually, an individual who maybe isn't so confident about that traditional academic route still has the same opportunity, the same access to opportunities, which can only be good for inclusivity in society.
Danny, what would be really helpful? Sorry.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, thanks for the overview. So we've got the levels here in front of us. Those of you on mobile will be able to talk you through them, but the majority are on laptops, so hopefully you can see it. Level 2 all the way up to level 7, potentially giving us some examples of the co-op and different apprenticeships that you have, whether it be in legal, whether it be in food and retail, and what levels that those apprenticeships are at. It might just bring to life and maybe dispelling some of the myths along the way.
Yeah, so I think I'll start with one of the key points which I'd like everyone to just think about in the back of your minds as we go through this. Apprenticeships will give you lots of things, but the core elements are knowledge and skills, which we've already talked about this afternoon. And when you look at level 2s, level 3s, all the way through to level 7s, you will often find a comparison between apprenticeship levels and qualifications which we know. So GCSEs, A-levels, HNDs, foundation degrees, and bachelor's and master's degrees. The important thing to remember is A-levels will give you knowledge. Apprenticeships will also give you those skills, and they bolt together. So if you are currently at school and you are currently doing GCSEs, doing a level 2 apprenticeship after school does not mean that you'll stand still. It doesn't mean that it's just the same, you're repeating yourself, because you're not. You're getting something new. That's the skills piece. So level 2s are often known as intermediate apprenticeships. They are usually in kind of the entry-level roles within an organisation or an industry or a sector. An example of the kind of apprenticeships that we run at Co-op at level 2 are retail. So we offer colleagues in our food stores level 2 apprenticeships. We offer colleagues here in our Angel Square building level 2 in customer service. So that's supporting customers remotely, time of need. And we also offer, interestingly, lorry driving apprenticeships at level 2. I think around level 2 is one of the things I really wanted to call out is a lot of people believe they are kind of, it's the first rung on the ladder, it's a standstill, it's a bit of a 12-month kind of an entry-level position, and that's it. Absolutely not. It's the first step in that ladder to starting to grow your career in a particular industry. I would call out that not every job, sector, career pathway will start at level 2. Some will come in at a higher level as well, depending on what sector it is, how technical it is as well. But the one thing I really wanted to bring to life is around the real variation of level 2. So a lot of people believe that level 2 apprenticeships are lowly paid. Some of them are. I suppose my recommendation would be really think about that, the values of an employer. If they're offering very low wages for an apprentice, but just be mindful that apprenticeships at level 2 can pay really well. So lorry driving apprenticeships, £24,000 starting salary. Wow. You get a license for life. So whether you leave Co-op, obviously I hope that apprentices don't, but that's not realistic. People do move on and change jobs. That license stays with you. So you have that for life, and it's funded by the Co-op and by the apprenticeship levy, with opportunities to earn £40,000 to £50,000 from one apprenticeship at level 2. No further qualifications required, apart from potentially a Class 1 driving license, which is not yet.
And Danny, in that situation, then I'll come in as a level 2, and there's no need for me to progress to level 3, 4, 5 because I've got my role, I'm doing well, and that's my career path. Is that right? You're in.
Correct. Yeah. You're in. And that's a career for life as well. You know, lorry drivers are massively in shortfall at the moment. And that's something which people think, not everyone, it doesn't sound like glamorous, but it's actually a really interesting job. And the amount of contact that you get with the public and the amount of contact that you get with colleagues is fantastic. And it's something which, we're really keen to push and really break down some of those stigmas of, level 2 has been lowly paid. Well, the last time I checked, £24,000 wasn't a bad starting salary for an apprentice.
Danny, I was just going to quickly interrupt just to say, so often I hear teachers saying, you don't do a level 3, don't do a level 2 because you're doing a level 3 in A levels at the moment, and that's a backwards or sideways move. And so many parents, young people are like, oh no, I can't do an apprenticeship. It has to be a degree level apprenticeship. Just one question that's just come in here. Which level apprenticeship would you recommend starting with if you have completed A levels? If it's a sector I have no previous knowledge on, should I start with a level 3 A level equivalent if I've got no knowledge of it?
Yeah, so I think there's a further question there, which I've asked that attendee, depends on the sector that you want to go into. So if you want to give us a bit of an idea on that, would be fab.
Yeah, maybe I'll let you speak. Go, sorry, Dan.
Yeah, in a nutshell, though, I would always say, actually, I think level 3, level 4 degree apprenticeship is where you want to be looking. It's not about how do I get the highest qualification the quickest, because you've got to be mindful that an apprenticeship is tough, and actually you've got studying and work at the same time. So doing a degree apprenticeship, I would say, is harder than going to university because you've got the two to balance. And therefore be mindful of that as you go into searching for apprenticeships. But it depends on the industry that you want to go into. It depends on the job that you're looking for, really. So for example, if we look, carry on.
Sorry, Danny, I was just going to say, does that depend then? So the work I've got to do off the job when I'm not driving my lorry or I'm not an accountant, does it get harder then for a level 7 versus a level 2? Is there more work to do when you're not doing your job? Education-wise.
Yes, I think, I wouldn't use the word harder because that's a personal situation. I probably would say there is a different type of work. So the higher the apprenticeship, usually the more theoretical the learning. So the higher you go, i.e. level 4, you will start to have more theory, more referencing, that kind of university style learning in there, whereas level 3 or level 2 probably wouldn't have that. Much more focused on the job, tasks, the real kind of nuts and bolts of what you do.
Okay, good stuff. And I've just had in fact, I'll let you progress on. Sorry, Danny, because I'm interrupting you at the minute. You were moving through a little bit more, I think, weren't you, in terms of those levels?
Yeah, so just to flag on those kind of, on that level 3 piece, which we had the question coming earlier on. So really interesting on level 3, and I would say really a really kind of step change to level 2s in terms of what a level 3 will bring. It's usually focused in a bit more of a technical area. So for example, we run level 3s in accounting, we run paralegal, so our first step into a legal career, in Manchester, Stratford and Bristol. We offer HR as well, so you can start to see they're much more technical areas, much more technical business areas than maybe a retail or a customer service or a lorry driving apprenticeship. No disrespect to those areas. You often find management qualifications starting at this level as well. Again, it's referred to as an advanced level, usually in reference to an A level, a BTEC at that level as well. But one of the things I would really call out is going back to knowledge and skills. So we recruit, for argument's sake, level 3s from college to go into our legal apprenticeships. Those individuals will have a level 3 qualification. It's an A level, that's what they have. But they won't have work experience, they won't have employability skills in the way that they would get necessarily on an apprenticeship. So that's why there's nothing wrong, and actually it's not a bad shout to go from college to level 3s. It's not necessarily about looking at apprenticeships as to what is that next logical academic step. It's about how do I access an industry? How do I access the job? What is that end goal that I'm looking at? And how can I make sure I've got all of the work experience, the employability knowledge and skills, and most importantly, the technical knowledge and experience in a role to then progress through that ladder beyond? Because I think the one thing I would call out on any of these apprenticeships is you don't choose from one route or the other now. You don't say, I want to go to school, college, university, or you don't say, I want to do level 2, level 3, level 4, and so on. You can cross over. So you can move from a level 2 to college, then to a level 4, and then to university in its traditional format. So it's really fluid. It's much more fluid than it ever has been. And that's one thing I would say is actually look at the end goal. Where do you want to be? And work backwards.
And with that in mind, often people at the co-op, if I wanted to get into the co-op, it might be you start at level 2 or you start at level 3 in that particular field. But then let's say I'm really, really driven, I really want to get a degree. How could I then progress through the levels, for example? So higher and degree level. Could you just touch on those for us, please, Dan?
Yeah, so interestingly, there's a big bracket here. 4 to 7 is a massive bracket. We see a lot of individuals leave college and go to a level 4. Which is kind of the traditional step after sixth form or college. But it doesn't mean that if you do a level 4, you can miss out on a degree apprenticeship, because you can still apply for one. In fact, usually it would mean that your degree apprenticeship is shorter because you've done some of that learning already. You can, importantly as well, do a level 4, let's say in project management, which we have at co-op. So we recruit level 4 project managers straight from college into our property team. Those guys then have an opportunity after 2 years of passing that level 4 to move on to a degree apprenticeship in project management. So that ladder is there, whether you take a level 4 through to a level 7. The one thing I really want to get across in this section, I'm just mindful of time, Chris, but one thing I want to get across in this section is there is a big difference between a level 4, a level 5, a 6, and a 7 as standalone apprenticeships and a degree apprenticeship. So if I do a level 5, it doesn't mean I'm going to get a degree by itself. I'll get a qualification, but I won't get a degree as such. A level 4, 5, and 6 wrapped up together, that is what a degree apprenticeship is. In the way that it would effectively mirror a university cycle. First year, second year, third year. Level 4, level 5, level 6, degree. Level 7 is your master's and postgraduate qualification. One thing I would call out is that there are some apprenticeships out there which do actually have level 4 to 7 all in. So if I take the solicitor apprenticeship, amazing opportunity. If you were to choose after college that you wanted to go into a level 7, effectively is what it's called, a level 7 solicitor apprenticeship, you will do level 4, level 5, level 6, and level 7 over a 5 to 6 year period. And by the end of that, you will be a qualified solicitor, usually with a guaranteed job at the end of it as well.
And Danny, is it? Sorry to interrupt. You were going to conclude.
You get everything in that one. So it's really about actually understanding. You know, it can be so complex to search through. You know, what apprenticeship level should I be doing? Forget the levels for now. It's probably what I would say is a starting point. Think about what that end goal looks like and work backwards, and then look at what your options are. If you're looking to be a lawyer, there's nothing wrong with starting at level 3 and working your way up. If you're maybe not ready for that big jump into solicitor apprenticeships, maybe you always want to go to university and study law. Do a level 3 in paralegal and then go to university and study law, if that's the route that you want to do. But it might be that actually you've got those cards on the table and you say, actually, the solicitor apprenticeship is where I want to be. And it's that kind of forward thinking, end goal objective, which I would recommend, whether that's for apprenticeships or university. It's that kind of thinking which will help you really identify what is the right level, what is the right program for me, where am I at in my education.
And that's probably why we're seeing so many amazing apprentices. I mean, I run lots of panels around the UK where we're not in COVID-19 situation. And there's 18, 19-year-old apprentices on my panels speaking well above their age and just phenomenal. And it's obviously because they're a type of person who's quite mature in the sense that they already know kind of where they want to go with their career. They've had a go, they've gone through an application process, and then now they're in an apprenticeship and building their career. Whereas I went straight to uni, hadn't a clue what I wanted to do, to buy myself a bit more time. So I suppose now that there's a good route for those students who are quite savvy and quite proactive, would you say, Danny?
Yeah, I think so. I think you've hit the nail on the head there.
Okay, good. So I want to just go to some questions now, really, guys, because that was a great synopsis there from Danny. Do co-op do apprenticeships in business management, Danny?
Yes. Yeah. So we offer level 3 business admin and degree apprenticeships at levels kind of 4 to 6 in business management.
And we've got iBad there just agreeing with you, really, saying you're right and saying that teachers sometimes give maybe the wrong information to students to try and get them to do a certain clear logical route, because maybe as a teacher, I used to be one, you really want to see that student go from a level 2, a level 3 to a level 4. It's quite easy to think that, but maybe, Danny, you're saying, look, maybe don't do that, because you might be missing out on some opportunities that could be brilliant for you longer term. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, and I think that the one thing for me would be, it's fair that teachers think that. It's understandable that teachers would think that. I think that the most important and the one thing, whatever you take away from this session, the one thing I would really encourage anybody to focus on is, what is the quality of that destination that I'm going to? So if an apprenticeship is right for me, because that's where I'm going to get the best learning, the best development, I want that experience. Maybe you're not right. Maybe you're sick of the classroom. Maybe actually university is the right route for you and you want to go down the traditional academic route. It's all about the quality of that destination. And remember, just because you don't go to university now doesn't mean that you can never go to university, and vice versa. Just because you don't do an apprenticeship now doesn't mean that you can't change your career further down the line using an apprenticeship.
No, absolutely. Thanks, Danny. And guys, it is Q&A time now, so do raise your hand. You can ask questions. I'm going to leave it on this slide instead, though, just in case you want to ask any questions around what's on this slide. I'll come to the T-levels question soon, because that's quite technical. But one question I've got here. So if I take a gap year and do a HR assistant level 3 apprenticeship program, then go to university to do psycho, it won't affect my progression into my career? Question. Sorry if my question isn't clear to understand.
I think I've got a gist of that question there. So I would always say, again, look at the end result. So if you wanted to go to university to do a psychology degree, make sure that you've got the qualifications that you need to get into that qualification, that university, that specific degree that you want to do. A level 3 apprenticeship is deemed equivalent by the government as A-levels. But just bear that in mind when applying for university. So do be mindful of that end result and that entry criteria. But taking a gap year, I think, why not? Why would that hinder your experience? As long as you're making the most of that gap year and developing yourself and learning lots in whichever way that might be, I think there's value to be had there, as well as an apprenticeship and then on to university.
And a really good question from Emily. Should we still be applying to apprenticeships with everything going on right now with COVID-19?
Oh, good question. Yes, I think I would really encourage, as an employer myself, I would really encourage considering apprenticeships. I think with taking my co-op hat off and being broader than just co-op, I would say it is a very sensible thing to have more than one option. So if you are thinking about apprenticeships and you try to get in touch with a company to understand if the apprenticeship is still open, then I would be definitely saying have a backup plan, either which way around that is. But apply for an apprenticeship and have a really open conversation with the company that you're applying to be really clear that apprenticeship is going to go ahead. Okay. But yeah, I don't see a reason why not. We're recruiting we'll need to recruit over summer for apprenticeship opportunities across the UK, because at some point in the near future, hopefully this is all finished, fingers crossed, and we can get through it. We're going to need people. We still have a business to run, and therefore we need to find the best way of getting colleagues in over a turbulent time.
Absolutely. Guys, remember, if you do raise your hand, you'll skip the queue. Remember, Emily, we need to hear about your example of how you joined Co-op as a volunteer. I think that's amazing. Two questions that I'll do first. When will Co-op open applications for apprenticeships starting in 2021?
Ad hoc, really. So we, as a business, are quite in our infancy around planning in the academic year. What I would say is keep your eyes open. On our website, there's a register your interest, and you'll get a notification if anything that goes live. But we are trying to move our business into a position where we're looking at kind of end of this year. If I'm being realistic with everything that's going on now, I imagine it'll be January, February time where the bulk of our opportunities go out next year.
And Danny, I'm not sure if this is from a student from one of the Co-op academies, because you have quite a few schools under the Co-op brand, but they've asked, do Co-op schools have priority for apprenticeships at the Co-op?
Depends what you mean by priority. Will we go out and engage in those schools directly? Yes. Do we do that in every school? No. So in terms of hearing firsthand about a lot of our opportunities, academies do get first vision of them as such. But the academies trust are really clear with me that the best person gets the job, whether you're from an academy or not. So I would hope that if you're from an academy school, you've got a good understanding of our business, and therefore that might help your application, but there's no priority as such.
Okay. Is there any criteria to consider when applying for an organisation to know it's a good apprenticeship? Good question. So how can we spot the good organisations? Are there, what do I need to look at when I'm looking at an apprenticeship? University for me was sport, Loughborough Uni, quite simple. Do I need to be thinking, what would you say in terms of your top tips to this and this when picking an apprenticeship?
Yeah, I think, Chris, to your point around Loughborough University being the best for sport, the reason why Loughborough University is deemed the best for sport is because of its reputation. So looking at an employer's reputation, places like Rate My Placement, top 100 tables, they're often a good place to start to understand who's serious about apprenticeships and who isn't. I would always recommend people looking at salary as well, not necessarily to understand who pays the most, but if I'm being perfectly honest, I would be really conscious of national apprenticeship wage, £3.50 an hour for the first year. Not every employer can afford to pay big wages, I get that, but it's about an investment in the future of an organisation. And for me, from a values perspective, companies should be paying the right level for the role as such. So I think
So I was just going to say, would that be a bit of a warning then if they were maybe abusing the system to pay you the minimum wage? Would that be maybe look into it a bit further?
Yeah, I would say don't discount it straight away, because there are some fantastic small companies out there offering really great apprenticeships, but they don't have the funds to pay. And that doesn't mean it's going to be a bad apprenticeship, but that for me is a trigger in my mind to do a bit more deeper dive. So looking at reputation, looking at what's on the table. I would also say actually look at what that progression looks like as well. What else do they offer? If it's just a level 2 and that's it, then where do you go after that? What does that next step look like? So again, look at what companies are doing to invest in their colleagues. And Glassdoor is another really great tool to use, which is like TripAdvisor for companies, but across not just apprenticeships, but across all employment as well.
And I've put those in the chat box, guys, so you have that. But Danny, the reason they can pay lower than the minimum wage is because you only work a 4-day week and 1 day you're learning. Is that the reason they get away with paying less if, like the government said, you can?
No. So 2 points there, Chris. I think first and foremost around salary, it is it's a decision by the government to support smaller organisations in making sure that apprenticeship numbers are still strong. So that we're encouraging smaller businesses to employ apprentices, not necessarily just those who can afford to. So that's good for the economy. Second point is apprenticeships aren't 4 days at work, 1 day off as such. It is 20% of your annual contracted hours. So it doesn't mean that you work a Monday to Thursday and then you have a Friday to study. It could be in any which shape or form. So it could be you have 2 weeks full off work at a residential study block with the university, and then the rest of that kind of corresponding time is working, and so on and so forth. So it's a fluid approach to apprenticeships, not necessarily 1 day off, 4 day on.
Right, okay, thanks, Danny. How do you think the new T-levels will affect the uptake of apprenticeships? This sounds like it might have been from a teacher or a very knowledgeable student.
It's an interesting one, I think. I think T-level seems to have been a bit of a slower burner, really, at the moment. Obviously, with a lot of questions and planning still to be done into T-levels. I think they're a different proposition. I think employers, we might see a drop potentially in apprenticeships as employers look to focus their finances and investment in more placements, to then see the recruits after the education has happened. But they're going to give you a different experience, aren't they? And I think it depends on how much of a crossover between what apprenticeships are offered and what T-levels are offered. I think that'll really be a dictator as to the impact on either one. I would really hope that there wasn't too much a negative impact when it's the Institute for Apprenticeships and Technical Education, which manage both of them under one house as such. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
Well, it's 10 to 3, guys. So we've got a few more questions here and just a little bit of a survey to do at the end. So I'll flick through these questions. Remember, if you do want to ask a question live to Danny, put your hand up and I'll come to you. Maybe we're not coming forward over the Easter break because we're sitting back a bit more relaxed. I'll throw this one to you, Danny. What is the equivalent to a PhD in apprenticeships? Is there such a thing?
Not yet. I do believe a level 8 is in development. Which is obviously after that master's qualification. If I'm being perfectly honest, I would see that being very niche in what is offered in terms of the type of an apprenticeship. When that will be released, I would imagine probably end of the year, beginning of next year is when they'll probably start to release some guidance around level 8.
Thank you, Danny. What's the apprenticeship interview process like in terms of assessment centres? Danny, that's something we're looking at next week in Focus, aren't we?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So I would probably, rather than go into the detail of that, Ella, I would definitely suggest dialing in next week because we'll go through the whole selection process, not just at Co-op, but wider than that as well. We'll run through kind of application through to your first day and what that looks like. But in a nutshell, it can be really varied company to company. And usually it would definitely involve an online assessment of some description or face-to-face interview.
We'll go through that all this time next week, Ella, with Danny. You're going to be doing that one with us as well, potentially?
Indeed.
Brilliant, that'd be good.
If you're not bored of my monotone voice.
Not at all. My squeaky one represents it differently. It's fine. What sets the Co-op's apprenticeship scheme apart from its competitors? Emily Reynolds hitting a great question there.
Oh, that's a good question. I think a couple of things. Rate for role. So we pay rate for role in every single opportunity. So there's none of this £3.50 an hour. If you are a CTM, so a customer team member in store, with an apprenticeship or without, you'll be paid the same. We, as a business, you may or may not know, but we are massively into social value. So really cooperating and supporting our communities. And I think the opportunity to do that at Co-op in all of the apprenticeships, and it's woven into our education in the apprenticeships as well, is something that's really unique because it's not a CSR, it's not a corporate social responsibility initiative. It's part of our lifeblood as a Co-op, and the opportunity to get some amazing experience, some really good structured development, to work in a retailer, which, as I mentioned, there's probably 50, 60 industries, which you're in the business, whether you're in retail, you could come and work in our head office, or you could go and work in funeral care. So the access to career pathways within one organisation
is vast. So that kind of opportunity to engage with a company the size of Co-op, I think is really unique.
Thanks, Danny. Here's another question. I've been to some apprenticeship program and many apprentices said to apply to as many different sectors as possible. Do we need to have a fixed sector in mind, or can apply to any that appeal to them and have the skills for?
Good question. I think, so from an employer's perspective, you need to be really certain that the opportunity that you're applying for is the right one for you, and be able to talk about that and bring that to life. If there are 4 apprenticeships, one's in being a harbour master, one's in being a greenkeeper, one's in being an electrician, and one's in being a police officer, if you're interested in them, then apply for them, find out more, and then as you go through the selection process, there's no reason why you couldn't kind of tick them off your list, or actually get to the point where you think, I really need to make a decision here. I've got some really good opportunities. Only you can make that decision for yourself. So I would say, apply for ones that you're interested in. Apply for ones that you feel like you have the skills and qualifications, if needed, to get through that process. But most importantly, make sure that you are invested in the application itself.
Right, guys, we've got 6 more questions to get through, but I want to set a task for those of you not asking a question. Please, could you put in the chat box just one key thing that you think you've learned from this session? It could be more than one, but I just really want to get some ideas of what this has hopefully helped you with before we wrap up. Danny, a few more questions if you can. You're doing really well. Thank you very much. If I do an apprenticeship, can I also work part-time on the weekend?
Good question. It depends on the apprenticeship. It depends on how old you are. So, for example, if you're under the age of 18 doing an apprenticeship, legally you can only work 40 hours a week across any employer. So be mindful that you will likely to be full-time as an apprentice. If I'm being perfectly honest, I would be shocked if you were doing an apprenticeship, earning money, having to study at the same time, having to have a social life and a family life, whilst going to the gym or doing whatever you want to do, and then working part-time on a weekend. If I'm being perfectly honest, I wouldn't say that was good for your welfare, but that's an individual decision to make. Just be mindful of not burning out. So my recommendation would be, you're employed in an apprenticeship full-time, and therefore just be mindful of how much work is involved in an apprenticeship, because it's not easy. It's hard to balance everything in one.
And that's really good, to understand how hard it is, as opposed to, balancing your education along with work. It must be a challenge. Ryan, thanks very much. Krishna, very much for putting your thoughts of this session down. We'll come to those in a second. Just briefly, Danny, sorry, someone's asked, what is a T level?
Technical level. So it is almost a flip to apprenticeship. So apprenticeships is majority time employer, minority time learning. It's the other way around. So majority time learning, experience and placements with employees as well. So I can't remember off the top of my head how many days. I think it's about 100-day placement over the course of an academic year. Don't quote me on that. But yeah, a T level is a good opportunity to stay in classroom-based education, but study towards and gain experience in a vocational area.
Okay, thanks, Danny. I've applied to an apprenticeship, but haven't had any response. As a backup, I applied to university. What would you recommend? Should I go to university?
Only you can answer that question without shirking that answer. I think, they're very different opportunities. I think it depends on what you're interested in going into. But for me, only you can make that decision. One of the easiest ways and long-standing ways of making a decision is get a piece of paper, pros, cons of apprenticeship and university, work through. And that is probably the most simple way it can help contribute towards that decision-making process. Yeah, only you can make that decision.
No, thank you, Danny. What is the schedule for next week? Guys, because it's Easter this weekend, the schedule for next week is going out tonight. I won't give it away, but we've got some exciting ones, including our first sort of bigger name celebrity type person, because we're trying to mix it up a little bit in terms of content after Danny Matthews.
It's a bit harsh, Chris.
After Danny Matthews, of course. So yeah, watch this space. Tomorrow, 2 till 3, I'm going to announce it on Instagram. So log on to Instagram at 2 o'clock to find out as well. Alan Todd has asked, can students change the focus, different functional area of their apprenticeship after a period of time at the co-op?
So I would always recommend that an apprentice sees the learning through. So if I decide, so I work in recruitment, if I decide that I wanted to do a level 3 or level 5 apprenticeship in HR, then I would always, I think you need to be really committed to the learning, probably most importantly, to be honest. There's nothing to say that you couldn't change jobs. So if I went from recruitment into learning and development or our HR technical team, I would still be in a position where I could evidence my learning. But what I would say is if I went from recruitment, studying a HR level 5, to a lorry driver, I couldn't complete the apprenticeship because you have to be able to evidence your learning because it's a vocational qualification. So you can change jobs whilst in an apprenticeship, but naturally it's unusual. I've never seen it myself, see a student drop one halfway and pick another one up, because actually it's about making that informed decision about that right route for you throughout. So I suppose, you know, to university, it's probably a little bit less flexible throughout the program as such. You know, sometimes at university you can do 2 years and then switch on a conversion course to another degree. But yeah, just bear that in mind, that you can change jobs as long as it's in an area where you can portray the learning and evidence the learning that you're getting on the apprenticeship. So.
Brilliant. Guys, Danny's just said that he's got a few more minutes to ask a few more questions, because we've got a few, I just want to read out what people have learned from this session, which is great. But before people do log off, just in case you do have to get off anywhere, let me quickly type this in to the chat box for you to quickly complete, if that's okay. It's just a few questions for Danny giving up his time, for the co-op getting behind us, and just so you can help us. If you're interested in the co-op or anything that we've spoken about today, put it into that survey. Also, guys, remember, it's on the page at the moment, student@pathwayctm.com. Drop us an email anytime and we'll pick up the phone to you, and we'll support you. If it's an apprenticeship you're thinking about doing, or an application you're struggling with, or you just want to have a chat about your options, that's what it's all about, really. I've just got one more question that's popped in here, Danny, if it's okay for a few more minutes.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I'm here.
Thanks for your time. I completed, oh, here we go. Sometimes the English isn't quite right, but I complete a level 3 apprenticeship in HR, and I wanted to do an apprenticeship in another sector. Would I have to start from level 2? If I've completed a level 3 in HR, would I have to start from level 2 in something different?
No. So it depends on the apprenticeship you're interested in going into. So you could join so for example, you could join from a level 3 in HR, you could become a level 4 in data and analytics, for argument's sake. We don't require, or apprenticeships don't require you to have a level 3 in data analytics to do that. So you could actually use your level 3 qualification in whatever subject, whatever sector as such that it's in. You can use that to access other career paths. There are certain, you know, for example, technical sectors where you will need qualification in a similar subject. So for example, we recruit for degree apprentices. We've got one probably going back out again in food technology. So for someone who makes our food products and designs them and tests them, which is an amazing job. The apprenticeship itself requires you to have a level 3 qualification in a chemistry or a food-based subject. So if you had a level 3 in HR, but didn't have a qualification level 3 in either chemistry or food, then you would have to obtain that qualification, and that might be starting at level 3 again. But it's unusual that you would have to go down to level 2 to work your way back up, and that's why it's so fluid. You know, you can change. It's like anything, though. You know, if I wanted to become a football coach or a chef, well, I would need a qualification in cooking or in professional coaching to be able to access that. So I have to go out and get said qualification. So you can't just use what you've got sometimes and access different career pathways, but sometimes you can. That was probably the most long-winded, wordy, mouthfully, waffly answer I've ever given.
Danny, we've been working you for a long time, and
Sorry.
I must admit that you're the library, the dictionary of apprenticeships. It's really good, the detail that you're going into, and it's great that we've recorded this as well. So we'll share it with everyone for that detail. Next week, it just makes me think I'm excited. We're looking at assessment and selection. So Danny will be able to really help you with the next step. If you think an apprenticeship's for you, the next step is how do you get in? So Danny and I will be talking about that. No more questions by the looks, but just a few things on the chat box, Danny. You might want to pick out a couple that you like as well. One from Ryan. I've got a clear understanding of the levels an apprenticeship offers in comparison to other forms of education. Really well written as well. It's really funny when people ask me a question on the Q&A and it's not written quite correctly. I'm all over the place. You might notice, guys. So thanks for writing that. Krishna, who I think actually has applied for work experience at Pathway, who spoke to Tracy, I think, recently. Anyone else who's interested in digital marketing at the moment, wants to write content and get involved, email into student@ and then Tracy will have a home for you. You've learned that level 3 apprenticeships are good even after A levels, despite what teachers may say. Well, there we go. That's interesting.
Yeah,
Rachel, don't discard level 2 and level 3 apprenticeships. Really good. Sorry, Danny.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with all of those. I think just be mindful and always look at the end product is probably what I would say. Is, you know, look at what is it you're striving for. Not what do you want to do for the rest of your life, but what's that first career step, and work backwards. Be that at university in your first year, be that in your final year of university, be that as a primary school student, be that as a year 10, 12, whatever that might be. Look forward, work back, because that'll help you get to where you want to be the quickest way and in the best way for you, which is ultimately about that quality of destination.
Brilliant. And then I'm just going to read out 3 more. It's quite nice. From Emily, I have confirmed my understanding that an apprenticeship is the right path for me. And I've also learned that once you're in a company, there are many opportunities to learn different parts of a company in more detail and the different jobs available. That's fantastic. Danny, you've done your good day's work. Jesse,
can I just say, Emily, it'd be great to hear from you. Obviously, being part of the co-op, and maybe we can kind of touch base after this.
Okay.
But just for everyone else, I didn't pay Emily anything to say that as part of the co-op. I'm joking. Just Chris, just mindful that
yes.
We had a question earlier on. Was it from Manav?
Potentially.
Manav, if you're still on, do you have a question for us?
I think Manav tried to raise his hand, and
okay.
Yeah, that's fine. But no, Danny, I'll link you up to Emily. Okay.
Yeah, great. And if anyone needs anything, if you want to link me up to anyone else, that's absolutely fine.
Thank you very much. And final 2, Jesse, I've learned a lot more about apprenticeships. I was initially clueless, thanks for being honest, Jesse, about them, and set ongoing work experience, then getting a job. But I've definitely changed my focus on that after this. The slide touching on CVs as well was extremely helpful. Thanks, Danny, in what to include. Finally, trying to spot the good apprenticeships and certain sites to use is very helpful. So that Rate My Apprenticeship, the Glassdoor, we put those down in the chat box. And finally, from Alan, to hear from real life apprenticeship provider, advocating giving live feedback is crucial, as it's more valuable from teaching staff who have theoretical limited experience. Alan is a teacher in London, so therefore really beneficial. He's a great supporter of ours, and I know we've got some pupils from Stack on this as well. And you've got some roles coming live in London, haven't you, Danny?
Yes, we do. Yeah. So it's looking likely it'll be over summer now. I need to really finish the planning on this one, but we're looking at some retail apprenticeships down in London. And just on that point, while I've got everyone here, so we've got retail apprenticeships in London coming up. We've got customer service apprenticeships here in Manchester in our head office coming up, about 12 to 15 of them. And interestingly, we've got quite a lot of legal apprenticeships as well coming up in Bristol and Stratford-upon-Avon, so just the Birmingham area. So if anyone is in those areas or interested in an apprenticeship in co-op, please do keep an eye out for that. And most importantly, make sure you register your interest on our website, because you'll get first access and many opportunities go by.
Brilliant. Danny, it's been a great hour, just over an hour and 10 minutes. Thank you very much for your time, and we'll see you next week for the session, same time at 2:00 next week.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, everyone, for your time and some really great questions there. Have a wonderful Easter, even if we are in lockdown. But stay home, stay safe, and take care of yourselves.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks very much. Bye.